I spent many years working with violent men and women, and I want to talk a little bit today about men who are violent, um, you know, towards women, in full-fledged relationships with women, and they beat women, and then when they get in prison, that violence doesn't stop. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been counseling men and women for many years now, and I want to take some time to talk about violent men. Specifically when they become incarcerated and they start to have, relationships, um, like they get into other romantic relationships with other inmates. I'm here to tell you that, those men don't stop being violent. Just because a man goes to prison, man or a woman, just because they go to prison, and women are the same way too. Women don't stop becoming violent. I have had to counsel many men who have beat other men black and blue, and raped, all kinds of stuff that happens in there. And trigger warning, by the way. But that violence does not stop. Other forms of violence that doesn't stop when someone goes to prison is stalking. Stalking is a huge one. I cannot tell you. I was stalked quite a bit working in prison, and y- most of the time you can contain it, but there were a few that got really, really scary. There was, I think, on my hand, two that got really, really scary. One, and had to eventually be shipped out because they got so aggressive, and it got to the point where they were going beyond bounds. Like, there's certain areas that inmates can't go behind, and they were just walking right on by and not minding corrections. And yeah, it's just got to be aggressive. But, men who beat women, beat their children, they don't stop beating on the outside just because, they're going to rehabilitate. No, they actually become smarter about beating too. So they do it in a way in which they're going to get caught. They're not going to get caught, excuse me. And so what will happen is, you know, uh, their person will come and tell me, and they're all covered in bruises, they're black and blue, and things like that. But they get violent, controlling. They want to control the relationship. They want to be dominant all the time, and so they still utilize that physical aggression. In fact, here's something that I've learned in my many years of interviewing men, um, that have been sexually assaulted, and just have been victims of abuse. Men will often abuse other men and boys worse than they abuse women and girls. And it's because of I think, based on my experience, I think it's because of the, like, you're supposed to be a man, you're supposed to take it. And so therefore, I'm gonna be a lot more aggressive because you are another man. So that's like a green light to be more aggressive and brutal. The same thing goes for, again, trigger warning, for rapes and stuff like that. I cannot tell you how many, rapes I have, interviewed, rape victims I've interviewed that have been especially brutal, towards men. And not only will men sort of beat other men, sexually assault other men, they're going to rob them too. So they're going to steal them, they're going to steal everything they got. So it's not uncommon for a man to be left naked, unfortunately, in his cell, without any clothes, without any food, without anything, because him and his homeboys have literally come in there and stolen everything. Or for him to be pressured for commissary, or for their trust accounts, or their money, their finances and things like that. So they're gonna steal their money, or they're gonna have them call somebody on the phone to send them money so that they could basically rob them. Essentially, they could be quite vicious, and it's something you really have to, like, be savvy enough because a lot of clinicians missed it. But I'm very nosy, and I'm always going over to my inmates' house, their cell. I'm always looking, I'm always talking, I'm always outside watching what they're doing. Anybody that's passing a note, I'm that person. Like if you try to pass a note in my class, I'm gonna snatch that paper and I'm gonna look and see what you're writing because I need to see everything. If you get up and go somewhere, I need to know where you're going. So I'm very like, I can be that way. And so much so that like they started trying to do that with me, like Dr. Jones, where you going? That kind of stuff. But it's you have to be mindful and look for that because abusers don't just stop abusing. Killers don't stop killing either. Again, people just get to be they are more savvy about it. And you have people, unfortunately, that will get wounded very badly, that don't go to medical, because they don't want to draw attention to it or they've been pressured or things like that. But again, I'm very nosy. And so when you have someone that's nosy, like me, a lot of that stuff calms down. When you have someone that's nosy and that will actually take actions, because a lot of clinicians, somebody mentioned this on another post, how people are very inconsistent with what they enforce, but I'm very consistent with what I enforce. So, if you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get in trouble. And so I definitely think those things are important. It's important to call out bad behavior, and it's important to enforce rules and expectations, and every day that got challenged when I worked in corrections. Have you ever tried to tell a killer, sit in your damn seat? Just that sort of thing. And that could be quite intimidating, but you kind of have to be able to do that. Like you have to get rough with them and they respond to that. But you also have to counsel men that are very much still abusive and don't care about the consequences of hurting somebody else. And unfortunately, trans found themselves in a lot of, find themselves in a lot of predicaments in jail where they're being aggressed upon because a lot of people become possessive or jealous or feel like, hey, that's a free sex slave, so they get to come in my cell, and so we're going to fight over them, and that would be one of the number one things that men in my prison would fight over is who gets access to what trans and like, oh my gosh, if a trans had to move out of a cell, you would thought World War II was beginning and ending because that just stirred up so much chaos over men losing access. But one of the things I would have to talk to them about is like sexually inappropriate behavior, boundaries, and things like that. Like I would educate trans men and the men because men who rape will still continue to rape and they're going to take it. So just a little something I thought about today. I hope that helps. If you like this, definitely be sure to subscribe to my podcast and my newsletter. Both are linked in my bio. Thanks so much. Have a good day.